Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Alton. Alton, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Love it. Well, Alton, I'm really excited for the conversation today, but before we dive in, would love to have you introduce yourself, let people get to know you, talk a little bit about what you love about marketing and content and your background.
Sure. So I'm a content marketer with about 8 years of experience. Started out in journalism, then freelanced for a few years. Following that, worked at Built-in for a little over 4 years, and that's where I really cut my teeth as a content marketer, marketing the Built-in platform, but also working on behalf of our clients who were interested in hiring tech talent and improving their employer brands. So got to work with a lot of different companies in a lot of different industries. And from there, worked at Jasper AI, marketing both the platform and working to do a lot of brand awareness, thought leadership, completely separate from the product overall, just getting people more educated on generative AI and its potential and also its challenges and think that it could do a little bit better. I have a lot of experience in traditional content marketing, but also with really educating audiences in a lot of different ways for a lot of different reasons, which is I think where a lot of my passion comes. Like I get really fired up when I get the chance to talk about something engaging that the audience could potentially learn from and being able to have conversations about those things versus just taking on content marketing from a more sales driven perspective.
Very cool. I love it. And I think that is something that more marketers can really latch on to. This idea of how do I write for the person? How do I tell the right narrative? How do I engage with people? I love that sentiment. Like, let's think about the person first. And that's the whole point of the conversation today is how to make content for humans, for actual people and their needs, and not just focus on algorithms. So, Alton, when you're looking at it, obviously, when we say algorithms, we immediately turn to Google. So what are your thoughts when it comes to Google and writing content for Google versus humans? Like, how do you bucket and maintain and manage and think about that in general?
There's a lot there, especially given the changes that generative AI has brought to Google. So since ChatGPT has come out, every company has essentially invested in generative AI in some form, and one of the bigger ones to do it is Google. So now when you Google anything, not anything, but when you Google a good amount of different subjects, generative AI will give you a response there, which means that you're less inclined to continue scrolling down the page to those sites that traditionally ranked really well on Google, but now there's less incentive to actually click them. So it's difficult to see the same results from traditional organic traffic in that way. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing because it does create more opportunities to connect with humans. I've spent a lot of time looking at different blogs for all kinds of companies, from Fortune 100 companies to startups in the middle of nowhere, basically. And unfortunately, now so many blogs are built for Google versus being built for humans. And you can see that they're blogs even from the titles, but once you click them open, they're kind of like a paint by numbers, like SEO 101 intro course type of article. And there can be value in those articles because at the end of the day, the goal is for them to rank so that people can learn from them. But if someone is looking at your core blog versus just finding it via Google, it's not as engaging as it would be if the whole thing is like an SEO paint by numbers blog. So I like to think of content marketing 2.0 post generative AI as looking at a blog roll in its entirety and being able to see that it is built from a human first perspective, meaning everything on that blog or everything on that company's social media presence is driven by what that audience person, even if it's just one person, what that target audience member would love to see. What content would be educational to them? What would make them want to keep revisiting that blog roll, that LinkedIn page to get more of the things that they would like to see from that brand. And those human first content efforts creates consistency, and consistency creates people who just appreciate your brand and would be more inclined to spend money with it. SEO is still very important because you want to be able to maximize the reach, the value of your content. So when you're telling human first stories, injecting it with some of the traditional SEO principles that we're all familiar with is absolutely worth doing, because the more you can rank, I mean, the higher your chances of being seen by anyone on the web. It's just that that was the focus for so long, and now the human focus side of it should be the focus versus writing for algorithms. Now we're writing for other people, for the Benjamins and the Altons out there.
I love that. Yeah. So it sounds like you almost, I think a lot of times people say, great, here's a keyword, write an article, publish. But it sounds like you kind of flipped the script. You said, here's a person. I'm going to write content they need. Then let's go find out how to distribute via SEO and search engines and algorithms. But it's almost like you flipped the script. Is that an adequate description that you would say?
In a way, yeah. I kind of see it more as tipping the scales a little bit. So before the keyword research dominated the scale. That's where so much of the weight was pushed, and that's where that's what content briefs were built off of. That's what entire blog rolls are built off of. It's like the keywords, right? Now, I think it's about using keywords to get a sense of what people are actually searching for, to get a high level sense, zoomed out. Okay, what are 100,000 people searching? And that's what you can get a sense of with these keywords. But then once you might have a sense of that, I think it's super important to drill down to one person or like two people, two specific personas with specific challenges and specific traits about them. And you write to them and you try to educate them, you try to engage them, you try to get them more on your team, so to speak. And so I think it's about using both at the same time, thinking about them both in tandem versus just heavily leaning on SEO and thinking about that keyword and really doing everything you can to rank based off of that. You want to rank in a human's head now versus just on Google's SERP page. And I think combining the two is the best way to do that, and combining them at the same time versus like just leaning into one first and then building half the article based off of that and then trying to shoehorn the other side in.
I love that. I really love the phrase you just used, how to get it to rank in someone's head. I'm not going to lie, I've never heard that before, but it makes perfect sense, right? Like we often do right for the Google algorithm, how do I rank it? But we forget that there's a human algorithm. What's going to connect? What's going to drive value? What's going to build a relationship? Like they're completely different, components to that algorithm. But I love that kind of hacking mentality of how do I really rank in the human's head? I think that's cool. So you should copyright that term because I've never heard it anywhere else. I think that's super cool. So I love that. So now that you've balanced the equation and the formula and you've kind of figured out, okay, let's make sure that things are in the right order. Let's focus on people while keeping algorithms in mind. Where do we go from here? Like it's easy to say we got to balance them, but like how do we distribute content? How do we look at it? How do we kind of move to content 2.0, like you said, away from content 1.0?
That is a question that a lot of marketers are asking themselves now. A lot of companies are asking of their marketing teams now. And there's really no clear answer. I've spoken to a lot of marketers about this, and what I have learned is that a lot of it right now comes down to a few general principles most of which being investing in social media a lot. Social media is kind of becoming the new Google search page. Like people are getting news and information and things like that on TikTok and Instagram, and LinkedIn is definitely evolving into like a social media. I mean, it was always a social media platform, but it's even more social than it ever has
Yeah.
been versus just strictly being professional. And there are ways to kind of capitalize on that if you're a brand, especially one that wants to connect with people versus just selling things essentially. So social media, there's way more emphasis put on it now compared to ever before, and way more value that can be derived from it now compared to ever before. But how to exactly take advantage of that, I think, will differ from business to business. What might work for you might not work for me. Like the tactics might differ depending on the business that we're trying to market or what the message we're trying to send, the particular asset we're trying to promote, things like that. And so I think experimentation is going to be huge. A marketer who and a marketing team who's not afraid to swing big and take a number of swings, I think those are the companies that are going to eventually find out where they fit within this evolving landscape. They can find out the best ways to appeal to their specific audience, because they might not know that their audience is on TikTok as much as they actually are. They won't know that until they get on TikTok and start making content and just seeing the results over time. And it's not going to be an overnight thing. You're not going to hit a home run the first time you step up to the plate. You're going to strike out a couple of times, but it's important to keep stepping up to the plate and keep taking swings. It gives up and coming marketers an opportunity to jump into the field and make a good impact. I think it gives experienced marketers an opportunity to really use their skills, but try to apply them in different ways and kind of reinvigorate like their, not careers in a way, but just for them to learn. Like we're all continuous learners. So I think investing in social media, investing in new content platforms, even that a particular business hasn't invested in, if they're just used to making ebooks all the time, try a webinar. If you're used to doing webinars all the time, start building infographics and dropping them on social media really quick. Repurpose your content, evolve your content. Take a blog that's been sitting on your blog for 2 years and update it, evolve it, like change it up, format it into something different, make a TikTok video about it. So I think companies that aren't afraid to take those types of swings and experimentation will definitely see more success than the companies that are just used to doing the same thing over and over again, basically, as in this content 2.0 world that we're in.
I love that. Yeah, and like the general theme, I love how we're talking about really writing content and creating content for humans first. You talked about ranking for humans. You talked about the different platforms. But you said a phrase in there that I absolutely love. You have to want to genuinely connect with people. And I think, as you have really pointed out, if I just want to provide value and understand my audience and I care about them and I just create content that they actually need, that changes their day, makes them better in some way, shape, or form, that's the algorithm you need to learn. And that algorithm will always be the same. Providing value, if you can hack that algorithm and figure it out, all the different platforms, the Google algorithm will always change. Like it already does, like once a year or something like that. TikTok's algorithm will change. The video formats, like the Twitters and X's and all of that kind of stuff, those algorithms will change and everyone can learn those. But I think it's so cool that you focus particularly well. What's the human algorithm? And then how do I translate that to the various platforms? And I think that you're spot on with the experimentation. How do I take big swings with it? How do I connect in all new ways and provide even more value? We're coming close to the end of the podcast time limit. Alton, anything, like any last pieces of advice for people trying to figure this out?
I want to double down on what you just mentioned, in that the algorithms for any social media platform, for Google, all that stuff, those things change. The technology behind all of this stuff changes. We don't have any insight into where, when, why, how these changes happen. But I think underneath all of that, the people who are using these platforms to find services and products and information that they want, those people and their whims and desires don't necessarily change as quickly, as much, or as dramatic. For instance, with Jasper, we were marketing to enterprise level marketers who wanted to create more efficiency on their team. They wanted to give their team members more time back in their day. That has been the same since marketing has existed. I mean, marketers have always had a lot on their plates to be able to get through in any given day, week, month, year. So appealing to people who have that pain point is pretty unwavering, which is good. And that means that regardless of the changes that might come on the technological front from how the platforms are used to market to them, the people that we're marketing to will, like, those people might evolve out of that eventually if they move into a different company, whatever the case may be. But there's always going to be that audience there, and they always want to be engaged. They always want to be appealed to. They always want to learn more. So I think focusing on that more than how to game the ever-changing systems is going to be important, because you'll have a solid foundation of principles that you can use to apply to these people versus always trying to adapt to these changing technological systems. And you could build like a really robust game plan for one system, for Google, for TikTok, and then a year and a half later, you have to throw it out and start from square one. Whereas if you just have a really, really strong base of who your audience is, what they appreciate, what they want from you, then you're always going to be a step ahead. You're always going to have a good base for your marketing operations to run from.
I love it. I love it. Well, Alton, I have learned so much. I have a lot to think about. This is also going to be an episode I re-listened to quite a bit, so I appreciate it. This has been really, really good. If anyone wants to further the conversation and connect with you online, how can they find you? Where can they find you?
LinkedIn is the best place. Yeah, I'm relatively active on there. So yeah, shoot me a follow on LinkedIn. Shoot me a message. I'm happy to wax poetic about this stuff all day and talk about whatever else. So yeah, I really appreciate the time, the platform, and the opportunity to get nerdy about marketing.
Love it. Love it. Thanks again. And I appreciate all the insights today.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.